All right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. Your microphone just not working? Yeah, it's completely deactivated. You're in here. Give me a test 1, 2.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Oh, it is working. All right, they just have to control it for you.
Yeah.
So the board here
the board
is
not
working.
lighting up. Although I didn't hear his voice. Did you hear it?
I think you're clear.
Say it again.
Project.
Are we good here? Because I don't want to have Hazy having a meltdown, other people
like it's
having a
coming
meltdown.
through. No, it sounds like him. That's good. I feel like it's coming through.
I didn't
JP.
realize he was having an issue, so I will control his microphone if need be.
We understand that, JP. Rough start. Can you hear him projecting when he's speaking?
He is completely on air and everything's
Thank
sounding
you.
loud and clear.
All right,
He
we're
looks
all good.
good, too.
We're all good.
Looks
Everything's
good.
fine.
You look good. He
what a
was-
way to start the week.
good.
I wasn't worried. It was more he was like, I didn't think your mic was going to work.
Well, I had a meltdown right before we go on air. I usually go down and give it a little click, and I have something to say to you, and I gave it the click, and it's ninja dust.
So here's what needs to be established. You are live
hot
until
mic.
7 p.m.
A hot mic. You are not allowed to speak in the
There's
breaks.
no sneezing. There's no breathing improperly. There's no little whisper.
Wrong.
during the break.
Get someone in here to fix the lights.
Well,
got
luckily,
somebody-
we do have someone already
We've
here
got
from
IT here looking at everything.
We've got IT here already, so our boy will step in here and we'll find a way to make that all work. But good to see you guys.
How's
Beautiful
everybody
weather.
doing here? You had a nice weekend.
Actually, we did, and I think I should establish that out of the gate. I've had a lot of people reaching out looking for updates on my partner, Al's brother. The ayahuasca retreat was a massive success. I want that pointed out. He has left the retreat. He left last night after the final buzzer. He is home. His newfound knowledge is doing well. He's doing well, a little bit tired, but Al's brother's doing very well.
So he's back in the fold then.
I want everyone to understand that everything's all good. And, yeah, everything's kind of moving in our
Dude,
direction.
he is such a mouthpiece. Like, it takes him nothing. Like, you guys got skunked in the first weekend, and just one loss. It's like little Al's brother on the group chat. He's like, nothing to see here, huh, fella? He's a weasel.
Well-
he set Luke off. There was some language in the group chat.
Well, Luke is not. You guys are 0 for your last 3 and picking brutal games, like way off on the Miami game.
Yeah.
That Bengals pick was just a layup for you to take the points. You know Joe Burrow's not going to get blown out in Kansas City. You know that. And last night I thought we had a win. It was a really greasy backdoor cover. Houston had that game the whole night. They fumble in the red zone. That ends up costing a cover, but Houston ends up winning. And I think there's a number of things to come out of the weekend, but there's a lot of bad football being played.
Dude,
a lot of
I said to you,
injuries.
we were talking before, like, there's some great storylines. Like Carr in New Orleans, great storyline.
yeah.
Kyler Murray out in Arizona, great storyline. Mahomes is still Mahomes. And there's a few other that I haven't picked up on, but it's a lot of trash, man.
Baker Mayfield.
Baker's a great
There's
story.
another one.
That's a great story. Baker Mayfield deserves a ton of love. They're going to Detroit and win that game.
Amazing
They
stuff.
won big game. They're 2-0. Tampa's
But
2-0. It's an amazing
The Bears
start.
quarterback is no good.
I'll tell you what, there's already panic for a lot of young quarterbacks in this league. I did not like what I saw to Caleb Williams last night. I think he's tough. He took some big hits. Their offensive line didn't hold up very well.
Well, he's playing hero college ball. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, how many times did you hear Collinsworth say, not college anymore?
Yeah, and the fear when you have a young quarterback is that when the veteran receivers who have been losing a lot want to turn the page and they realize it's basically on you to make that happen.
Yeah.
And you're not doing it. Like the Bears are 1-1. They found a way to storm back in week 1 and they got themselves a win. But you look at Bryce Young, who's been benched. That's news this hour. Bryce Young at 0-2 in Carolina. He may not play again. Like that is probably Carolina saying, we're done. We're cutting bait.
Yeah.
We've given you last year in 2 games and we've seen enough and you're out.
Yeah.
But there was a play last night, I think it was DJ Moore late in that game where he was open, like he broke loose, and it wasn't an easy throw, but it was a throw that elite quarterbacks make.
Could have been made,
And
yeah.
have to make. And Williams overthrew him by like 10 yards, and he got up and started shaking his head and kind of stormed off towards the sideline. When that starts happening, that's when you got trouble.
Yeah.
When you get veterans who have been losing and they're looking at the young guy being like, you got to do what C.J. Stroud is doing. because that guy's 2-0.
Well, that's the troubling thing. If you're a veteran guy and you're looking at it and you just said the rookie quarterback has to do it, what if you're looking back there and he's not even close to doing it?
Yeah.
What if he needs 2 or 3 years and the veteran
You're
guy that's been
concerned about
losing and dealing with all the garbage is like, I don't have time for that. What am I going to waste 7 years of my career? You're lucky to play 7 years in that league.
No, there's some stuff. Like, even I wanted you guys' opinion because watching that Kansas City game, again, people were like, the refs just give KC.
You got to beat the Chiefs and the refs.
My Partsy said that was legit DB.
I think it was. He got there early.
That was pass interference.
It did look like pass interference. He got, but did you see Joe Burrow was pissed at that play because that's a young player making that mistake.
Yep.
Because that wasn't. I don't know if he was going to catch that.
I don't think it was a catchable ball.
I don't think he was going to catch that.
What is really frustrating watching football, and it was really on display last night because I think there were like 20 flags thrown or 20 penalties, is how often the flags come up when there are big plays.
Right.
One way or the other. It's like, okay, you got him off the field, 4th and short, missed it. Nope, roughing the passer, 15 yards, move the chains.
Dude, I'm telling you, the quarterback's a factor, man. You get Bryce Young throwing a wounded duck up there, he's not getting no flag on nothing, man. But Brady back in the day on an important throw or whatever, he got the flag every time.
It seems that way. Like, listen, it's kind of like a strike zone. It's like a foul in the lane if you're LeBron.
Yeah.
The best players and the highest profile players, the refs are naturally thinking, well, he couldn't have missed that.
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like it's a subconscious move where you're like, that guy, he's not missing that pass. Something had to happen.
Right.
You know, someone had to hold, or there had to be some sort of infraction that made that come to an end. But still, the Chiefs, they weren't that good yesterday, and they still won, and they're 2-0.
Yeah.
And that's what's scary for the rest of the league.
But don't you get a sense of kind of, I think, watered down is a little bit, but you got the Chiefs and maybe 2 or 3 other teams, and it's like the rest is trash, man.
Yes. Cowboys were so bad
That was
yesterday.
ugly. That was ugly.
44-19 at home. They never lose at home. That defense was so good the week before in Cleveland, and they were awful yesterday. The Lions are now 1-1. The Jets, they got a win, but it was ugly.
Yeah.
It's, Miami's in trouble with their quarterbacking situation. There's a lot of injuries. The Rams are 0-2. They got smoked yesterday. Cooper Kupp's banged up. Puka's banged up. Like, it just, a lot of teams you look at that you had expectations for, and it is early.
Yeah.
Some of these teams will get out of it. I still think Baltimore will get out of it. It's a brutal loss. Survivor pools just took a beating over the weekend.
Yeah.
Niners are 1-1. They got spanked yesterday. It's just a weird start to the year, and it's early, but maybe things are changing or the tide is turning. Yet it feels like that team in Kansas City is just going to keep going.
It's all kind
Like,
of
they're just
lumped
gonna keep
together.
rolling.
But is the best story in the NFL Mayfield? Like, what's the best story in the NFL as far as expectations or?
I think the Baker one and Tampa being 2-0 is pretty cool. Like them going into Detroit and winning that game outright, that's a really serious win.
Kyler Murray's not far behind, man. Dan Orlovsky tweeted out he thinks he's playing like a top 5 player in the league right now, which is kind of crazy to think that he might have got there.
He was unreal in the first half against Buffalo, and then it got away from him. He didn't have a great second half. He torched that Rams defense yesterday. But in the first half, I watched every snap of the first half. He was so good.
There's another team, the Rams, trash.
Yeah, you could say. You know what might be the coolest
Harbaugh's
story
a good
too?
story.
Harbaugh's a cool story. Chargers 2-0, Steelers 2-0, and it's all defense.
Dude.
Like their first 2 weeks, it was like 1954. They won 13-6 yesterday and 15-10 last week. Like, what is that? Like Justin Fields is playing. He's doing nothing, and they're 2-0. Nothing, and they're 2-0.
That's my son's team.
Is the Steelers, but that's Mike Tomlin in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You give him a good defense, which he gets. He'll game plan. He'll get that team ready and hyped, and they'll find a way to win ball games. They're 2-0, leading the AFC
Doing
North.
nothing.
They have 28 points, and they're 2-0 aggregate score.
But
28,
how come there's
16.
not like a blockbuster deal? Like some of these trash teams that we were just talking about that do have a quarterback, can't they go pluck him? Like,
How are you going to do that?
I don't know.
How are you
I
gonna
don't
do
know
that?
how the transactions work in the NFL. But Mike Tomlin's got to be sitting there thinking, I've always been a good coach. I get my team to the playoffs, and I haven't had a quarterback. Well, Roethlisberger, it's been 2 or 3 years.
More than that, since he was in his prime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get him somebody. I just can't believe the cycle that they've gone through and what they tried to replace cabbage fingers with.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett. Small hands. Kenny, you got to throw the ball down the field. I can't. I literally can't grip the ball right now.
But dude, it goes even before that. Why are you drafting him? Like,
well, I hear you. And here's Russ, who can you clarify this, Doogie? Try to find this out. Was he officially inactive, or was he still like technically active, but it was understood he couldn't play? Because he is in full uniform. And if you're inactive in uniform, that is absurd.
dude, if you're inactive, I would take your gear off.
That is-
you can't play. You can't play.
Officially inactive.
But he's
like
got his
he
full gear
could
on.
not play. He was in full gear yesterday. And he did that in week 1. Do you know how crazy that play is for a veteran with a ring and $200 million in the bank to be in a full uniform? It's like
And he's not
Halloween.
active.
He
So he's
can't
just
play.
playing dress up. That's what
Every
he is.
other guy that's inactive is in a tracksuit with his team, helping out the team, but they are not in their uniform. We have to ask
Is that-
Luke.
is
Luke's
that
coming
a
up
hero,
at 5.
Hero move then or not? Or just
Honestly,
like
I don't even
delusional?
know how to describe it, Noodles. That would be
I
like
wouldn't know
you,
the
third string
reasoning.
goalie. You're in your gear,
Yeah,
up in the press box, in your gear.
but he's sidelines.
Taking
at
the
least.
elevator in your gear.
Are you inactive tonight, Noodles? I sure am.
But
But you're in your gear.
got your mask on.
You got your
sitting
mask on and a water bottle, and you're sitting up in the press box.
there, towel around the neck.
Yeah. Because inactive guys are just walking around in tracksuits all the time.
Can you imagine that? Scotiabank Arena, all the guys, you know how the scratches are in the one of the boxes up there, all in gear.
That's
All
what should
in
happen.
gear, helmet included, visors, and watch the game up there.
Okay, I think we have a correction. Do we have a flag on the play here? What do we have?
Yeah, what's going on?
You guys are jamming.
What's happening here?
Boy, it's been a rough.
Doogie, explain what's going on.
So he's officially inactive, but in the worst case, he's the emergency third behind Kyle Allen.
Okay, so he technically has to be ready to play. Then.
That's correct.
All right, we'll give him a pass.
Yeah.
That was going to be a good bit, too.
Oh,
we were
my
going to
God,
drive
that would've
that
been
home for the next
best.
3 hours, and now it's gone.
All I kept thinking about when you said it is the coach in the hospital bed coaching from the
Yeah.
luxury box.
What was that guy's name? Hugh Freeze or
yeah,
something?
like just hero.
Or like
He's in the
UTEP.
hospital bed. Yeah.
Guy was, he had like blown his back out or something, and
See, but now you can't really bag on him. It's like, okay.
it still seems a little
technically
bit
he's a
heroic, but at the same time, I guess technically he needs to be prepared.
Well, couldn't
He
you
probably
be
could
half
go
dressed?
yes, you could probably go get ready if need be
Right.
after Justin Fields came out of the game.
Right.
You know, you probably could pull that off, but maybe we give him a pass. Luke's coming up at 5 o'clock. So we're into, I guess the rookie camps are over.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance. I saw highlights online. Like you could have streamed the 2 games, which my understanding is they actually did pretty decent numbers,
I talked to
which
somebody
says a lot
this-
about Leaf fans and Habs fans.
I
They're
talked
sitting
to-
there watching
wanna have a
online,
peek.
It is.
dying to see these kids
Well,
play.
this is the future of these teams, and I talked to somebody this morning about the prospects on both teams. First and foremost, these kids got a treat because Bell Center was sold out for a rookie game. So sold out. The fans were loving it.
Well, it was like free admission or whatever.
Well, still, there's
Yeah,
like
it's cool.
2,000
Seats.
people. Like,
yeah,
you
people
know,
are watching you play.
like I remember like going to a Blues, rookie game. I just happened to be at the rink getting treatment or something. It's like 100 people there. There's 18,000 people over the weekend watching, the prospects on both sides, Leaf fans and Habs fans. And, some good young players. Not all of them are going to play in the show, but it sounds like, the Habs had a handful of guys that they're very excited about. Same thing with the Leafs there that, Minton looked really good. That's my understanding is that Minton was the best player for the Leafs. Again, that was just an opinion of somebody. But, it looked good. The
Yeah.
highlights, and I didn't
And
watch
it got a
it.
little rough, too, yesterday, which I kind of like, because
greasy.
Minton got hit from behind, and then that led to a reaction.
I don't mind that.
Minton was banged up. I don't know how he's going to be for the beginning of camp. I think that was Reinbacher that hit him. But, like, the Habs have a lot of really good prospects, and they had a few that weren't even in
3
the
first
game.
rounders on D. Apparently that Mayu looks really.
Mayu looks good. Lane Hudson's the one that really buzzing
That's
about.
the excitement. The second rounder there out of college. Apparently that kid is.
He looked
looks
good.
like
Of
a-
what I
like a
saw, he
Jack
looked really
Hughes
good.
Type of or a Hughes type of player.
Could be. He's not very big, but he can skate and he can move the puck and he makes things happen.
Well, we'll see. I mean, you know what? You can look good in a rookie game, and all of a sudden, we know there's 4 or 5 different levels. And then you start, you got guys leaning on you. If big defenseman that Hakanpaa, a guy like that goes into the corner with him.
It can be, it's a very different situation. You're playing with a lot of kids, a lot of guys who are not even going to play in the American League.
Right.
They're going to go back to wherever junior or maybe
They
the
might
coast
get
or go
one
to
game.
Europe, or they might find a game here or there. Jeff tweeting and saying the people paid $15 per ticket, and the money went to the Habs Children Foundation. That's really
great.
cool. That's exactly what it should be. Like a rookie camp, let people come in. You're paying. It's going to charity. It's not about making money for these teams.
18,000 though. That's crazy.
Isn't that
Pretty
amazing?
cool, eh?
Like that is a testament to the way things work in this country, because I think you'd get a lot at Scotiabank Arena. I think you'd get a lot in Ottawa. I think all 7 Canadian markets.
Yeah.
They would show up. Like I saw a lot of Leaf fans that were in the building as well, probably from Montreal or from Quebec or what have you. But that's a great roadie. $15, you get into the Bell Center, you're in Montreal, you're walking out, it's beautiful weather.
Great weekend road trip.
It's an unreal. You go to both rookie games, light the town up. I mean, you can't beat that, especially in September. So yeah, that was pretty cool, and we'll try to track what was going on there as we get closer to the beginning of camp. I mean, physicals were on Wednesday. Jani Hakanpaa was speaking today. They've got their golf tournament, the Leafs, today, and he's still rehabbing. He doesn't know when he's going to be ready to play, but it's kind of a weird start to a new team. The fact that you're not at 100% and it's based on injuries from the past, not something you suffered while you were working out in the summer.
It's got like a Klingberg vibe to it, where it's like, where are you really at, and what is it going to take for you to not be playing? Because from first glance, it looks like it wouldn't be a lot.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like when you get into this, it's just goofy, and you hope it works out, and it's not talked about the rest of the year, because it's kind of been a little bit crazy the last couple of years talking about like the amount of injuries and nonsense and goalies. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't guarantee health. You're never going to bubble wrap everyone. You're going to have to go through some ups and downs. But that can be the difference between a make and a break year for a lot of teams, is how healthy you remain.
You're right, but maybe it is an investment where he's banged up and he gets 40 games this year, but that's almost like an acquisition at the deadline. And
Are we going to load manage Jani Hakanpaa? Are we going to Kawhi?
All I'm saying is that
Kawhi Hakanpaa.
What you're trying to do is be ready for April, with this squad and a version of it. There is going to be changes. But if you see this guy, a 6'7" defenseman, a lot of those guys are plucked at the deadline because, you add a little depth here, add a little size there. You got him in the offseason for $1.2 million, I think it is, on a one-year deal.
Yeah, no.
Low
If he plays and he can be available come playoff time, big body, kills penalties, probably your third pairing defense. Well, he will be a third pairing defenseman. That can be a win for them for sure. And there's no reason to force anything in September or October.
And you need to know eventually he's got to play, because you need to know what he is and where he fits and where Craig Berube would trust him in the lineup and play him. But yeah, I think you could take your time with him. It's low impact.
Kawhi Hakanpaa. I love this, man.
Kawhi
Hakanpaa's got a great ring to it.
It does.
All right, Josh Yohe will join us of The Athletic later this hour. There's some news on Sidney Crosby out of Pitt. We'll tell you about it. And a couple of veteran Blue Jay players really speaking out on the players this year, and really taking bullets for the manager, the GM, the president. We'll tell you about that. We'll get into it. The Jays have themselves a very successful weekend. They're off tonight, back in action tomorrow. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles, McLennan, Luke Wilson at 5 o'clock. Richard Griffin later this afternoon. Griff was down at the park over the weekend where Jays had a very successful weekend. And they were talking, man. They were talking. And John Heyman, he's a pretty big shooter in baseball terms. He's been covering baseball for a long time. He's out of New York. He works for MLB Network. Got a lot of followers, a lot of weight. He tweeted out, I think it was a week ago, that the Jays just don't play good baseball, which is a pretty significant shot from someone of that stature.
It is.
And it's a shot at John Schneider. Like, effectively, if you're the manager and you're in control of the X's and O's and the fundamentals and how you run your shop.
Kind of the same thing when Montoya was here, to be honest with you. It wasn't was kind of a gong show, man.
Yeah,
Fundamentals was a gong show.
it was. And listen, they're not a very good team, and they've been playing horribly all season.
Right.
And after they sweep St. Louis, it's kind of a tough time to ask him to respond at that point, because then he's kind of puffing the chest out. And John, do we have that audio of John Schneider from over the weekend? Okay, we don't have that. But John responded by saying, effectively, unless you've been a GM, unless you've been a manager.
Right. Unless you've been in my shoes.
Exactly. There's Richard Griffin tweeting that out. He said, there's a lot of people think they can be a manager, think they can be a GM. If they've done it, I'll listen to those comments. If they haven't done it, I've got enough other stuff to deal with, end quote. So I'm not surprised he's not. What's he going to say? Yes, John's 100% correct.
Well,
he's right. I'm a disaster.
The one thing that would really bug me is who's Heyman to say the right way? Like, are you going to explain what your right way is and why they don't do it? I mean, everybody kind of in baseball would know what that means, but it's like, it's kind of a hero comment, and it looks like there's some like motivation to it.
It's a pretty significant shot.
Yeah. Like, when does an insider type or like a baseball guy like that ever come out with a comment like that? They don't do it very often.
Especially considering he's like an insider, quote unquote.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter the source. What I will say is the Jays do have a tough time really explaining anything because they have had a disastrous
season. They've had a bad year.
Yes. Like, of course, people are going to come out and take shots at you. Like, you have to be prepared for that. But I don't have an issue with Schneider not addressing it. I think the idea of you had to be a manager or a GM for me to listen to you is a bit rich, considering baseball is run by an analytics department who are guys literally punching numbers now.
Right.
They weren't managers. They weren't GMs. And I'm sure you have to listen to them when they send you that sheet saying this is how we're going to operate.
And you're pulling that picture at this time.
Yes, exactly. Like, I don't think John Schneider lives by that rule his whole baseball life. In fact, I know he doesn't. There are times where he gets information. He's like, this is the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
Furthermore, if an owner, again, that's an extreme example, but if the owner says this is the way things are going to happen, that's how it's going to happen. And that guy's never been a manager or a GM. That's the way it goes. But I understand why Schneider's got his back up against the wall, why he doesn't want to. What's he going to do? Accept that criticism and say, you're right, John? Credit to you for having the stones to call us out at this point.
And all he does is shine a light on himself. If he doesn't push back, then he's accepting it. Like, if you accept and go, yeah, he's making a good point, then what are you doing?
Well, exactly. It's basically you're writing your own ticket out of town.
Yeah, I would push back on that.
You have to protect yourself, protect the players. And there were some interesting comments out of some players over the weekend. Chris Bassitt was talking about the way the city reacts to the manager and to management. And he said, quote, fans would be yelling at players a lot more than, say, yelling at Ross Atkins, or they should be. I don't blame Ross. I sure as heck don't blame Mark Shapiro or John Schneider. Player accountability is massive, and I think we have that here. It's just for whatever reason, Jays fans don't want to yell at players. They want to yell at Ross. I don't know why, end quote. Now, I have a theory on this.
Somebody got to him?
Chris Bassitt, if you can recall, a few weeks ago, basically threw Ross Atkins directly
100%,
under a bus and then threw it in reverse and went right back over him. Because he said they threw everything at the wall with Ohtani. It didn't work. We didn't have another plan. We basically, it was a pretty significant shot at the front office.
Yeah, he was on a podcast or
yes,
something.
he was on with Chris Rose.
Shooting from the hip.
So someone probably went to Chris Bassitt and said, can you remember who gave you all this money, Chris, to come up here? Because they gave him a big ticket.
Yeah.
And he's been relatively good. He hasn't been great this year. Last year he was pretty good. I think it was a 3-year deal, $60 million. They paid him a lot of money. And that was Shapiro and Atkins.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is him overcompensating for the criticism that he's directed towards the rest of the team, including when he said earlier in the year how much pressure is on the starters to win ball games because they can't rely on the bullpen or the bats. Who's responsible for putting those guys together?
But I think
Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro.
I think the better thing for him to do would have just been to shut up, period, until the end of the season.
Yeah.
Because he says this, and it's just like, you get to a point where in our business, it's like, we want somebody that's going to say a little something. We want a guy to go on a podcast and blurt out the truth or what he thinks is the truth, where it might ruffle some feathers because it's at least honesty and it's not just standard cliches. But this guy's been blabbing a lot. It just seems like, dude, you haven't played that well yourself. You've been a massive part of the reason. Although nobody hits when you pitch, but you've been pitching like garbage this year.
Listen,
Just like, why are you talking so much? It's like a fine line where it's like, give us a little nugget once in a while, but it's almost like he's got too much to say.
feels like an overcompensation.
Yeah.
He's trying to spin it the other way.
Dude, it's a massive overcompensation.
Although you guys can speak to this, like the player accountability stuff. The players have not performed well, and a lot of the veterans have not been good enough. George Springer was also quoted talking about how the players just haven't performed. George's numbers are terrible. Bo Bichette, when he was healthy, terrible. Gosman hasn't pitched well enough. Bassett hasn't pitched well enough. There's a lot of veterans on this team.
You just said the 4 or 5 guys, the reason that they're in the position that they are.
Right.
Because they started off the season horrendously.
Right. And there is something about this market, and it's probably the history of losing, really, that there's just so much focus on the management because you want to see them get it right.
Well, what's the difference between a Jays fan base and a Leafs fan base where they start booing defensemen, they hate on a player?
It's a
Well,
good
he's
question.
saying that the Jays fan base doesn't do that, though. He's saying like they don't boo the players, they boo the manager.
Which is an interesting comment because you would think Bassett and Springer would be like, "That's great, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Let me take my $20 million and just go home."
Yeah.
They're basically
Fly under
saying,
the radar.
yeah, like come at me instead of Schneider and Atkins and Shapiro, which is an interesting thought because, like, I understand their connection to Schneider.
Yeah.
Outside of getting the check presented to them originally from Shapiro and or Atkins saying, we would like to sign you, here it is, what connection do you have to those guys if you're a player?
Right.
Like, why are you falling on the sword for management? I get it, the manager. If you like John Schneider, if you feel like he's a good manager, if you feel like he's been sewered here in some capacity, I have a great appreciation for players going to war for their manager or their coach.
Right.
Saying it's not on that guy. I'm telling you, it's on me. We haven't been good enough. And I would agree with that assessment. I think John Schneider's got to own some of it, but a lot of the best players have just simply not played well enough this year.
Right.
But falling on the sword for the GM and the president is not something you generally see from players.
Well, yeah, especially like to me, it's trying to get marks with upper management. If they were becoming a free agent or there was an option year or something, you're trying to kiss ass at the end of the year so the guy doesn't get rid of you.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he's staying, isn't he? Bassett's got another year.
Bassett's got another year. Like
Yeah.
Springer's got a couple more years. George was saying, listen, at the end of the day, those guys aren't playing. It's my job to move a runner
Which
over.
they're
and
not
someone
wrong.
in. Of
They're
course.
not wrong. The players have to own this. They're the ones going out and losing, more than not. They won over the weekend, but they haven't been very good.
Fans are all over Bassett. It's just a cycle thing, and you get your cycle. So when it was get rid of Tulowitzki and get rid of Donaldson, and it's like we're going to blow it up and we're going to do things our way, and that was it seemed like that was Shapiro and Atkins' way, and it kind of didn't work. It's like, oh, so you're going to be one of the rare guys that gets another opportunity to blow it up again and start over again? It doesn't happen a lot.
No, it generally doesn't.
And the first cycle around that doesn't work. Everyone's like, we want somebody different. We don't want to hear this guy again. We don't want to hear all the same type of things or different things because they seem to come up with a different thing, i.e. your little comment, internal growth.
Internal improvement.
All that stuff, it's like different stuff all the time, and it's like, that's enough.
There's fatigue within the marketplace for a number of executives. It's like politicians. If you're around too long, people are just like,
We're done with
I
it.
can't hear you
Don't
anymore.
even want to look at his
I
face.
can't see it. I don't want to hear it unless it's remarkably successful.
Right.
Like Nick Nurse won a championship 5 years ago. The guy's been gone for 2 years.
And it
Or a
got
year
to
and a
a
half.
point where it was Nick Nurse fatigue.
It was the end. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like 3 years after he had won. It's like, that's kind of enough. That guy won a championship, and he's out.
And it's gone.
These guys have not won anything. Brendan Shanahan's another guy, been around for a long time. It's like there's just fatigue after a while unless you're consistently winning and getting the job done. Fans are naturally going to attach themselves to that. And it's not easy to do. It's not easy to stick around in management for a long, long time. It's not easy to be a politician forever.
Yeah.
Difficult to do, like to keep the general public on your side.
Here's a barometer. Where's your brother at with the Jays? Because your brother is a diehard who sits there and watches out
as
on
soon
his
as
deck.
the first couple months, it was for viewing, like just to say he's watching that he hates them.
Yeah.
Yeah, He's sick of it.
It's ugly, man.
Yeah.
They just haven't been a good team all year.
No,
and the players have underperformed. A lot of their best players have underperformed. And these guys are right that they should probably be under attack, quote unquote, a little bit more. And we'll see what happens with Springer in the future because George's got a couple of years left. And if it's a mess, believe me, he will hear it. Like people will let him know down at the Dome and throughout the city. Yeah. But the other guys have just it dates back to the Ohtani stuff, the falling short of that, how they played in the past.
Had a mess of a season.
It's just a lot of it has become stale. That's the problem. And when it's stale, you look at the people at the top who are supposed to freshen it up. And I think that's why a lot of the attention is directed towards them.
What do they have, 12 games left? They're just limping to the end.
They're just going to get to the end. Yeah, it's like, can you get to 77 wins, 78 wins? Ultimately, it's irrelevant in the end. They're out.
Yeah.
All right, Josh Yohe coming up. We'll get into the Sidney Crosby signing. Sid has signed an extension 2 years at $8.7 million. So that means, I think Chris Johnston tweeted out earlier, he could end up playing 19 seasons of his career at a cap hit of $8.7 million.
It's great money, but
pretty
it's also
astonishing.
He's left some money on the table.
Well,
everybody is saying that, but let me tell you, when you sign a 12-year deal, you're at the risk of
100%.
Everyone getting lapped by everyone, and that's a lot of time, and a lot of guys are signing over that
Duncan
time.
Keith was at like 5.2 or something when everyone else went to 10.
Happens all the time.
Signed the 12-year deal. That was it.
Happens all the time. And, Sid, when he was originally making the 8.7, he was the highest paid player in the league, I think. Him and Ovi were making a fortune. At that time, that was the equivalent of a lot of money. But I would say for the last decade, you're getting remarkable value out of Sid. And last year, he got paid 8.7, and he was one of the 12 or 13 best players in the game.
This isn't a legacy contract. He's still earning that money.
Absolutely.
But
full value.
What is the contract? Is it for sure I'm playing here my last couple of years and then I'm done, or what does it mean?
I'm not sure if there's any fine print there. I'm guessing he has full control over everything. I'm assuming a player of that status ever decides, I want to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Not only does he get to leave Pittsburgh, he goes, this is where I'm going. And they send him there.
Yeah, they choose.
Whether it's Colorado, Montreal, Boston, Toronto, whatever it is, if he wants to do that, he's going to do it. But still, Sid committed to Pitt. And we'll come back and get into his legacy down there, what this means for the Penguins and their cap situation moving forward. Luke Wilson in studio at 5. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Luke Wilson in studio at 5. We got the Monday Nighter tonight, Eagles, Falcons.
Our pick?
You guys are on the clock. You might want to mix in a winner.
Yeah, you guys.
Whenever you're ready for a winner.
The
tide is turning here. Hayes and Bro is coming alive. There's a lot of people buzzing about the way we're seeing the board and how you guys are going the opposite way.
Well, Tim Donaghy behind the glass there.
Yeah, Tim Donaghy. He gave you a layup in the afternoon. Chiefs Bengals was a layup to take the points. And now you got the winner tonight. Tonight's an easy pick. You guys will jam it up. I know you will because you're not seeing things properly. But tonight's an easy pick. All right, so Sid, unfortunately not going anywhere. I got to admit, I've been very forthright on this. I wanted to see Sid move on because I just don't think the Pens are any good. I'm not convinced they make the playoffs. If they do, I don't think they're going anywhere. But I love Sidney Crosby. I think this is a perfect example of why this guy's the best. Just keep it simple. 2 years, 8.7. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Like just exactly what you want in an athlete.
Yeah,
and
not
a player.
messing
Well, if you're a
best.
diehard of the Pens,
best.
too, like if you're a diehard fan, you got to be saying, I really want to watch Sid the last couple of years, but what I'd really like is those Nuggets coming back if he leaves.
Well, that's another thing. If you're looking for a tank and a blow-it-up rebuild, think about what you could get for a deal with Sid. Here's Penguins writer for The Athletic, Josh Yohe, joining us here on Overdrive. How you doing, Josh?
Good. How are you?
We're doing well. So I guess this wasn't ultimately a surprise. Sid's been pretty forthright that he wants to stay in Pitt. He signed this deal. Do you think this wraps it up? He ends up retiring a Penguin?
I guarantee you he's going to retire a Penguin. The question is, will it be in 3 years when this contract is up, or will he play after then? I think there's a real chance these are the last 3 years of his career. That would take him to age 39. That would give him 22 seasons with the Penguins. It's not like he has anything else to accomplish. I know that playing in the Olympics in a couple of years is really important to him. We knew he wouldn't miss out on that. I know he wants to keep playing for a while, but he might not be a guy who plays, forever into his mid-40s. So we will see. That might be health dependent, but not shocking that he signed this deal, that's for sure.
Josh, great players like Sid have a lot of say. They have a lot of pull. do you know if there is any questions by him of what's going to be iced as far as the Penguins this year and next? Any demands? Like, what does he see? I know he's been frustrated. He's shown that in some of his interviews coming down the stretch the last couple of years. Like, what does he think of the team, what they're going to do in the next couple of years?
Well, it's interesting. I agree with you. You know that he's smart enough to know this team just isn't very good right now.
Correct.
And it's a new thing for him because they've been so good for so long. And I'm sure he's frustrated, but, part of it was the Stars doing. Like Crosby and Malkin and Letang wanted to keep playing forever. Well, Sid's game hasn't really dropped off, but Malkin certainly has. I think Letang's has a little bit. So, in a sense, Malkin and Letang, as great as they are, they're future Hall of Famers. You could argue they're part of the problem, and the Penguins are kind of handcuffed in that regard. Kyle Dubas has an incredibly difficult job, and he knew it when he took the job. All these guys, and I don't just mean those three, a lot of other players on this team have no trade clauses. I mean, it's a very difficult situation to do anything with. So I'm sure Sid would like if the team were better. I just don't think he wants to play anywhere else. And I think ultimately the goal probably for Sid, and I think also in Kyle Dubas' mind, is if Sid wants to play 3 or 4 more years, great. Maybe by then we can have a wave of young players, put some prospects and draft picks together for a couple of years, and maybe we can build something so Sid has a chance to make one last run 2 or 3 years from now. Might be unlikely, I don't know, but I think that's the hope.
Is there anybody on the team that you think could help with that process? Erik Karlsson was, I think, up and down all last season. Tristan Jarry had some inconsistencies. Like, is there some sort of framework there that you say, okay, I could build a case that this team could be a playoff team?
Well, sure. I would look at it this way. The Penguins missed the playoffs by 2 points last season, and they had a historically pathetic power play, which is amazing when you consider the talent.
Crazy.
You're talking Crosby, Malkin, Karlsson, Jake Gensel for most of the year. They finished 31st in the league on the power play, and to make matters worse, they also gave up the most shorthanded goals of any team. It's incredible. If that unit could be average, they might still be a playoff team. They certainly would have been last season. So you can make an argument. Karlsson, frankly, wasn't very good last season. Now, maybe that's age. I don't know, but I certainly think he probably has a higher level he can perform at. Now, if all of those things happen, sure, they could be a playoff team. Tristan Jarry, if nothing less, is usually a good regular season goaltender. So I don't think they'll be a terrible team, and I don't think the middle of the East is particularly good, but I still wouldn't bet on them to be a playoff team. The fact is, Crosby and Malkin have played all 82 games the last 2 seasons, and they still weren't a playoff team. That's a pretty big red flag.
With Josh Yohe of The Athletic, Sidney Crosby signing a 2-year extension today, $8.7 million per. He's got this year, then the following 2. You mentioned how important the Olympic Games will be to Sid. That's still a year and a half away. Based on what you've seen out of him, you see him daily, you know him well. He was great last year. I anticipate he'll be very good this year. A year and a half from now, do you expect him to be a guy that would still be considered an impact player? If you're projecting that for the 2026 Olympics, I think we all think he's on the team. But is it closer to a third-line guy, fourth-line guy? Is he a veteran leader? What do you project Sid to look like come February 26?
That's a great question because he's aging like fine wine. He's still, I think he's still clearly one of the 10 best players in the sport. But that is a year and a half from now. And, he will be, 38 at that point? And that certainly is the time when even the great players begin to decline. We know he won't be the first-line center on that team. I suspect, though, that even though he will be aging certainly by then for a 2-week period, I think it wouldn't shock me if you see virtuoso Sidney Crosby, especially if the Penguins are still not a very good team at that point, if that's really all he has to get geared up for. The fact is he's played in the Olympics twice and he's delivered 2 gold medals. And I know how much that means to him. That's a huge part of his legacy, especially in Canada. And he takes that so seriously. I know being the team captain of Team Canada is, just a very important thing in his life. I would expect that you will see a very good performance from Crosby, and I still think he'll be impactful, probably as on the second line with Nathan McKinnon, if I had to guess.
Josh, just to clarify, one of the three of us likes to go on SportsCenter and talk about potential trade destinations for Sid.
Yes, he loves it.
And how
he
exciting
absolutely
it would
loves
be.
stuff.
I'm not going to stop after today. I'm still going. I'm flooring.
But I just
tonight.
want you said for sure, like it guarantees that he's going to finish out his career. This isn't one of those deals where it was like, look, I'm happy to sign a 2-year extension, but look, if we're garbage come the deadline, I'd like to go. There's no such of that thing ever going to happen. He's a Pen for life, and he's staying a Pen. Can we just clear that up?
Yeah, I mean, that's anytime I have ever asked him, just off the record, whatever, would you ever consider playing for another team? He looks at you like you're crazy. He really does. And I take him at his word. People ask me about it all the time, and I will play along if he ever had to pick another team to play for. I'm sure he'd be in Denver. I mean, he is really close with Nathan McKinnon. I bet that'd be a fun team that'd be a nice little retirement gift for Sid to go play with Kel McCarr for a couple of years, sure. But I just, if you know Sidney Crosby, you know this. His two real heroes and role models in life are Mario Lemieux and Steve Yzerman, two men who only ever played for one franchise. And that just means so much to Crosby. He thinks the world of those two, partially because of that fact. And so I just, even though the Penguins are, very mediocre and kind of going in the wrong direction and everybody knows it, I just don't think he would feel right about himself if he ever played for anyone else.
With Josh Yohe of The Athletic, Kyle Dubas now has been there for, I guess, a couple off seasons anyway. Can you give us a kind of vibe check on the market and the fan base, how they're feeling about the job Kyle's been doing so far?
People are being patient with him. His first summer wasn't a very good one. He gave Ryan Graves way too much money. He gave Tristan Jarry way too much money. And he knows it. He admits it. I think Kyle at first really tried to ride the fence and tried to do what Ron Hextall did. He tried to keep them competitive and a contender while kind of rebuilding on the side. And you can't really do that. And I think after the first year, he came to that conclusion. So to Dubas's credit, he has exclusively focused on the future this offseason. He has acquired draft picks and prospects. He has not spent big money in free agency. I bet if you gave Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang a lie detector test, they'd tell you that they weren't real happy about it because they want to win right now. They want to see as many talented veterans as they can play with. But Kyle Dubas basically saw this team last year and said, you know what, this isn't a cup team. We basically do have to rebuild, even if these big guys are still on the team. So people in Pittsburgh are being patient with him. They knew it was a very difficult job. I don't think anyone's been blown away by anything he's done, but I think they just realized the degree of difficulty is extraordinarily high right now.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you for this, Josh. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Josh Yohe of The Athletic down at Pitt.
Didn't he trade for Kevin Hayes this summer?
Yes, he did, yeah.
32 years old.
Not the fastest guy in the league either.
That's the only thing I was going to bring up because you're right, looking towards the future. I'm like, you let Gensel go, which it is what it is, but Kevin Hayes is their third-line center.
Yeah.
Who's 32.
32 and
not a burner.
Not a burner. And that's the thing. They're old and slow. Like, that's kind of been their identity.
Which makes you question that transaction of bringing Kevin Hayes in.
Well, that's the only – outside of, some of the moves he's made, fine, there's a –
He was
Cody
jammed
Glass,
when he got there.
He was jammed. Listen,
Dubas
it is
was
what
in
it is.
big trouble.
Cody Glass move I thought was nice. I think that kid will be fine. But the Kevin Hayes one was just a little bit unique for me.
But Sid is one of a kind, man. Like, if he ends
is.
up playing 22 years in Pitt, he's going to hold every record, which seemed impossible. The idea of passing Lemieux. I guess McDavid, the same thing, chasing down Gretzky in Edmonton. Like, the idea of both of them, if McDavid signs an 8-year deal and plays 17, 18 years there, they're both probably going to rewrite the record books in terms of bold numbers, not like individual game stats or anything like that. You can't touch those two guys, Gretzky and Lemieux. But if Sid ends up with like the most goals, most assists, most points, and McDavid does the same thing in Edmonton,
it's pretty impressive.
That's incredible. Like, that's the old, if you had have told me 20 years ago, I'd say no chance. Nobody can do that.
Fascinating comment when he said the veteran guys like Crosby and Malkin, they would have wanted some more like help. Like, if I was the GM, I would have said, for 4 years, we've given you guys all the help you can get, and you don't get in the playoffs.
And like he said, though, Sid probably heavily involved. You got to keep Gino. You got to keep Letang. You got to go, like Dubas was fascinated with Carlson for some reason.
Yeah.
I never understood that move, and it like he's got. What,
Well, you
3
would have
years left
understood
at
that
10?
move if he played like the Carlson that was in San Jose.
100 points
Obviously,
the
but
year
that-
before. Yeah.
But that was that 1 year he had a magical season where it all came back for him. The previous 2 in San Jose, it was like lost.
yeah.
And
Well, I'd like
last
to-
year it just didn't.
Yeah,
You know,
that's right.
they
I'd
put
like
all
to
their
see
cap
him-
space into these veteran guys.
Yeah, I'd like to see it come back somewhat, and I think it will. It's just to what degree?
They're a team you want invest. That's been my whole point on Sid. I have a great appreciation for who he is, how he runs his business, his life. He loves being a Penn. It's his career. It's his life. But the idea of him just fading and the team being awful to me sucks. It sucks for the game.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been driving home. And I think a lot of people agree. Put him somewhere where the lights are on him.
Yeah.
Get him to a place, because that was Pittsburgh for a long time. The lights were on Pitt. They were the team. You got to go see them. Pitt's in town. You got to watch them. They're on, hockey night. They're on NBC. They're on ESPN. Whatever. I just don't think that's going to come back while he's still playing there.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Ovi and Washington. They're just going to kind of fade in their respective markets. But at the same time, they've done everything. They've accomplished everything. They don't have to do anything other than just continue to ride it out whichever way they choose.
That's true.
All right, hour 2 coming up. Luke Wilson will join us. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.